Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzaro-Mossi-Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Lost Signals interview. Today we're talking with Andres Rovira, who wrote and directed the upcoming film, actually, as of time of release, just came out, film, Between the Darkness. Hey, Andy, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh, we're excited to have you, man. Thanks so much for coming on. So I kind of just wanted to start off by asking you a couple questions about your career in general and kind of how you got started making films, and then we'll go into talking about the movie a little bit.
Sure.
So, kind of the first question: how did you get your start, or where did your interest in filmmaking come from?
I'll try to give you the abridged version. So, I've been making movies since I was a kid, but before that, it always started in prose. I always wanted to be a novelist ever since I was a little kid, and I would write my short stories and novels on computer paper, which was really dumb because there were no lines, so the lines would just like fall off the page. And eventually, I started typing when I got a like IBM computer, and then I realized that it was way more satisfying to watch something come to life on the screen rather than through words. So I took my dad's shitty Panasonic camera and started making movies with my older brother, and I played every single character. And what was cool about that is that you're basically editing your film on the camera, and if you don't like a take, you just rewind and tape over it. So the finished product is just me playing all these characters wearing different wigs, and just it's a very choppy, jump cutty thing, and it looks like a French new wave art house film, but it's not. It's just movies from the 90s.
It sounds like a lot of fun to make anyway.
It's so fun. It's so fun.
How old were you when you started doing that?
I was like 9 or 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty
And
young.
then, I always wanted to make movies. My parents didn't let me study film, so I figured let me study the closest thing to film at University of Miami, which was broadcast journalism. And what was great about that major was that I was able to get access to all of the cameras and film gear from the equipment room because I was a broadcast student. So I ended up sort of weaseling my way in there, and I ended up making more movies than all of the film students. And,
Nice.
and I was able to sort of smuggle my short film into the little Canes film showcase that they had every year. So it was great to see my film in a theater, and people were wondering, oh, who made this? He's not a film student. So that was, almost got me in some hot water. But I mean, the point was I made a film, and people responded to it, and that was a nice confidence booster. It was a reminder that what I'm doing is I'm on the right track. The films I'm making are watchable. People like them. They're getting a reaction out of them. So I moved to LA 6 years ago, and it was a struggle. I came out here with nothing. I came out here with my then girlfriend, now wife, and I worked at a restaurant. I worked as a PA on a bunch of productions. I worked on Key and Peele season 2. That was rough. The PA lifestyle it sucks. But I'm glad I experienced that because I was every day was a learning experience. I was just watching directors, watching them work, and you know what, PA work, it's grunt work, but in the end, you're on set, you're on a Hollywood production, and there's just a joy to that. Even if you're taking out the trash and breaking a hole in the trash bag and then spilling it all over you, which happened, it's still a good time because it's Hollywood. And we love making movies.
That's awesome.
I think it's important to mention that I got a job at Hulu, and I worked there for 3 years, the night shift. My job was to basically watch movies and TV shows and QC them. And it was in that job where I wrote a ton of screenplays, and I wrote a short film and basically produced it while working at Hulu. Because it was the night shift, I sort of had privacy to myself to produce films. So it's kind of like I had my own private production office with a printer and privacy. So I made a short film called No Stranger Pilgrims, got into a couple of festivals, and it's because of that film that I was able to meet the two producers that ended up investing in me and believing in me and producing Come Said the Night, which is now called Between the Darkness.
Right.
The film we're talking about today.
I was definitely going to ask where that name change came from, or if that was like your decision, or if that was like, kind of the production studio, or both of you, or.
Yeah, good question. It was not my decision. I wrote this film, and it was made and it was released, and it got into film festivals as Come Said the Night.
Mm-hmm.
But the distribution company felt that they needed to change it to something like Between the Darkness to help sell the movie. And, well, it looks like it worked because it'll be available tomorrow on multiple platforms.
There you go.
And sometimes this happens. Sometimes, when you make something, someone comes on board and has to change it in order to sell it. I'm okay with it. While I'll miss my original title, I'm happy that they were able to get it out there because that's all that matters.
Yeah, I will say I did like the original title a bit better, but they're both pretty solid.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Scott from off camera says he's a Between the Darkness fan, so we're split up
really?
here.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear.
But yeah, it almost puts me in the mind of like what was that Tom Cruise movie that they changed the name of after it left theaters?
Oh yeah, The Edge of Tomorrow.
The Edge of Tomorrow.
It was called Every Day I Kill.
Yeah, it was something like that. I forget exactly.
All I need is kill was the
all
original.
You need is kill. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting to see that kind of behind the scenes stuff and name changes and things like that.
It's funny. I have the poster for Come Said the Night like here in my room, and I'm looking at it right now, and it'll always be Come Said the Night in my heart.
Yeah, to you, that's all you need, man.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to ask you a couple before we get into the film. I want to ask you about kind of your preference for genre. So this is more of a horror film. The Come Said the Night, Between the Darkness, whatever you're going to call it. But is horror your preferred genre? Do you like to experiment with different types of writing and film genres and things like that? Narrative genres, that is?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have a favorite genre. I like all of the genres, and I like to experiment in all of them. I've pretty much made a short film in every genre. I've written in every genre. The only one that is a challenge to me is comedy, and it's this challenge that I want to overcome. I really want to make a comedy in my career. But yeah, I have no preference. It's all about the story, and that story could be told in the framework of a science fiction movie. It could be told in the framework of a horror movie or a drama. With me, it starts with the story, and the genre is just a framework to tell that. It's like it's a device.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely get that. As many people do say, comedy is one of the toughest ones to break into, especially if you're a writer.
Yeah. With horror, there's certain beats that you have to follow. And working at Hulu and watching so many horror movies for a living, to QC, yeah. I noticed the pattern that every 15 minutes you have your scare, and it's a rising tension. But with comedy, you have to have a laugh like every minute or every other minute. And that's a challenge.
Yeah, it's wild. I tell friends of mine, like, I'm a big Futurama fan. And if you watch that show, I've counted this out before. It's a laugh approximately or at least a joke approximately every 7 seconds. And it's like, wow. How do you even write a plot into this,
I know. Yeah. Futurama is so on it. Those writers are just on speed.
Yeah.
Like, that is talent.
It's insane. I don't know how they do it, but I'm glad they did. Anyway, so kind of also wanted to ask you. So you mentioned that you tried to do shorts and other works in pretty much every genre. Kind of what did you learn from all that other stuff that led you into this? This is your first feature, right?
This is my first feature, yeah.
Yeah. So kind of what did you learn from doing those shorter works? And I saw you did a few commercials and things like that. That kind of led you into working on a feature film.
Yeah, it's a good question because basically every short film, it was my film school towards making a feature film. And every short that I made had a really pretty long runtime. You know, my last short, the one that led to me making this feature, was a 30-minute short. And that's after I trimmed it. You know, it was actually like 40 minutes, and I had to trim it because I can't release a 40-minute short. It's not going to get into any festival.
Yeah.
So, you know, all of those experiences were practice. It was me, you know, flexing my muscles and learning and failing and messing up and doing things wrong and just never making those mistakes again. You know, you make the short film with the horrible sound. And then that's when you realize, all right, sound is everything. Let's put more money into the sound department next time. All right, lesson learned. They're all building blocks. They all led to me making a feature. And by the time the feature came, I was comfortable. I wasn't nervous. I had done this so many times. But with the feature, it's all about endurance because it's longer days. It's basically making one very long experience, and you need to have that endurance, or else you'll burn out. But it was only 10 days, which isn't a lot for a feature.
Wow.
So. Yeah, that was a hustle.
Yeah, I can imagine. Probably pretty long 10 days, huh?
Yeah. And considering the fact that we had a lot of minors, a lot of kids, so we had to follow these SAG rules and the child labor laws of California. So they were only allowed to be on set for a certain amount of hours, I think 6 hours. And they had to juggle schoolwork with acting, and that came with its own challenges too, because, you know, go figure, this whole film is Nicole Sherman, the actress that plays Sprout. She's in every single frame of the movie. So to only have her for 5 or 6 hours a day, it leaves us with the rest of the 4 hours of the day to film B-roll coverage of the house or all the stuff with the adults.
Right. Yeah. Wow. She is there constantly. That must have been rough, but yeah, that's awesome that you were able to get it done so quickly and you know, get the level of you know, acting out of everybody that you needed there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess with that, let's start talking about the movie.
Sure.
So you have in the cast here, Lou Temple is Roy Grady, Danielle Harris is Ranger Stella Woodhouse, Daniela Leon is Magda Grady, Tate Birchmore is Percy, and Nicole Maria Sherman, is that her name? Sprout?
Yeah, that's correct.
So, I mean, that's pretty much the main cast. There's a few other characters. Max, I think Max Page is Max Woodhouse in there as well. But that's a pretty, you know, that's a cast with some accolades to their name, and then some up and comers as well. Obviously, the kids. But you know, you have Lou Temple, who's been in some stuff, and Danielle Harris, who you know, if you've seen Halloween 4, you know exactly who she is. What was it like working with them? I know you worked with Mark Boone Jr. previously on No Stranger Pilgrims, right? And he's been in a bunch of stuff as well. Did that prepare you a little bit for working with bigger actors, or does that not really matter? What was your experience with that?
When it comes to working with you know, bigger actors, people that I'm a fan of, people that I've seen in TV, it's just that initial, like, get over the starstruckness early on. Treat, you know, these are just people these are just people doing a job. And once you recognize that we're all here just trying to make a movie, then there's no nerves. And I usually spend enough time beforehand with these actors, with rehearsals and studying the character to a point where they become friends. They're friends, they're coworkers, and basically they're your roommates because you see them 8 hours a day, every day, for a very long time. So when it comes to working with heavyweights, you just have to become friends with these people, and they'll, you know, and then it'll be easier that way. And with Lou Temple, it was such a great experience because I've always been a fan of him, and I always wanted to work with him. I actually sought him out specifically for this movie, but he's the kind of actor who really, really takes on this role and turns it into his own character. Because the version I wrote of Roy Grady was way different than what you saw in the final product, because Lou took it upon himself to reinvent the character. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. That's great.
Wow, that's really cool. I like hearing stories of that, like, the actors that kind of take the character onto themselves, and like, it's not necessarily an entire rewrite. It's just you actually, whoever wrote it or is directing it sees it in a whole different light now because of the way that this actor is responding to that role. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's like the way I see it. When I write a character, I invite a talent on set to bring that character to life. That character is their gift, and they could do whatever they want with it. They should be able to make decisions. It's something we do together. We create this character together, but in the end, it's that actor who will be bringing those words to life. And even little things like wardrobe. I went into Lou's closet to pick out wardrobe for this character. I mean, and we had our wardrobe department, but Lou wanted to wear clothes of his choice, and it just so happens that his closet had a lot of really relevant Roy Grady-like hippie, spiritualist, man of the woods type clothing.
Yeah.
So that was a fun session. Just playing dress up in his house.
That's great. So that's really interesting. Hearing like that that's kind of what people want to hear, is like this behind the scenes stuff. Going into, like, you hear kind of stories like that all the time when you listen to interviews with directors and things, and people that are working on films, of how, like, oh, we discovered this great thing in the star's closet and it just changed the whole movie, or, like, it changed the whole feel of the scene or whatever. I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, thanks
Also,
for sharing.
I forgot to mention Danielle Hair. It's great to work with, just a consummate professional.
Yeah.
She was only there for one day, and so we called it Danielle Day. That was our schedule that we were all dreading, because we had to squeeze all of her scenes in 8 hours. And some of her scenes ended up being at nighttime, but in the script it was daytime, so we had to do day for night. So there's actually a scene where she's talking to Roy in the kitchen, and it's nighttime, but we had to blast the window outside with light. It looks like daytime. I'm really proud of what we did. But she was really easy to work with. An actress like that, a heavyweight like that, doesn't need direction. She shows up, she knows her lines, she knows exactly how to do it. I give minor notes here and there, and she does it. One take Danielle, and that's it.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I'm sure that made it easier to get the shoot done in one day.
Yeah. Shoot. Yeah. I mean, we had no choice. We actually just had time for one take for everything.
Yeah. I'm glad it came out. Man. Like, that could have gone poorly, I guess. Like, but sounds like you had a good cast, good crew. So.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, are you screening this at festivals at the moment? Has it already gone through that circuit?
Yeah, it already went through the festival circuit. It's screened at Cinequest and at Dances with Films, but it's going to be released tomorrow on Amazon, iTunes, DirectTV, On Demand, a bunch of platforms. So we're at a point where our festival run is done, because it has distribution. So now you'll be able to watch it, on demand. Cool. Streaming.
And we'll definitely get those links up in our show notes as well.
Yeah.
Just so anybody who's listening can go there and check it out. I wanted to ask you, are audiences kind of getting out of this? Like, when you talk to audiences about it, are they kind of getting out of it what you intended for the film, or are they interpreting it a little differently than you intended, or how's it coming off, do you think?
Yeah, it's getting the reaction that I wanted. In the end, beyond all of the violence and, heavy themes on sexual repression, it's at its bare bones, it's a story of growing up, of being a kid, and all the awkwardness that comes with being a kid, embracing who you are, whether that be your sexuality or your identity, dealing with an annoying sibling, weird parents, and just the fears of being a kid. I was scared of a lot of things when I was a kid, and I actually do have sleep paralysis. That's the personal part of it. And when I talk to people, like, after screenings and stuff, they all respond to the childhood aspect of it. They all really respond to Sprout and Percy and their sibling relationship, because they are the heart and soul of the movie. Without that soul, It's just cold and just a bummer. And we don't want to watch movies like that. Even a movie as dark as Hereditary still had its humane silver linings, in there. You have to have that, or else it's just a snuff film.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. It's funny you bring up Hereditary because that's you weren't making a similar movie per se, but you see a lot of kind of themes that are close to each other in this, and I guess it's a lot of thinking of these kids going through something that maybe they don't 100% grasp, at least not right away, and then coming to terms with it and trying to deal with it and seeing them grow up right in front of you,
Yeah.
just because of the things that are happening in their the horrible things that are happening in their lives. But you do see in those moments of like happiness and joking and like getting annoyed at siblings and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
You're right. That's the whole heart of something like that.
Yeah. I like the concept of someone being forced to come of age very quickly due to the circumstances around them. I think that's an interesting sandbox to play in when it comes to horror movies. And in the case of Sprout in this film, she has to come of age at an accelerated rate because of what's going on in the woods and with her father.
I actually wanted to ask you. Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit. I have a couple questions that are maybe going to go into like longer and bringing out more questions even in me as I get the answers to them. But your take on polytheism in this and the Greek gods, worship of the Greek gods in this is really interesting. And I was wondering a bit if you had kind of a personal connection to that material. Did you have to do a lot of research on this stuff, or is it something you were already really into? And why did you make this family a Greek god worshipping family? Where'd that come from?
I chose paganism because we've seen the crazy psychotic Christian cultish family already before in movies like Red State. We've seen existing religions being knocked so many times in cinema. I wanted to do something different. And with Greek mythology, you have the opportunity to play with so many fun things like monsters, gods, and it's a horror movie, so it's a perfect platform to explore in that. And Greek mythology is rooted in a lot of sexuality and hedonism. So I was making a movie about sexual repression. I couldn't think of a better religion or deity than that of Greek mythology, where you have gods like Aphrodite. But overall, my relationship with religion is complicated. I went to Catholic middle school, and then I went to an all-boy Jesuit high school.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry?
I went to Catholic high school as well, so I know. Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah. Religion was hammered into my brain, into my schooling since I was a child. Oh. And I never really connected with religion. It was always just that thing that I had to do. Going to mass was that thing I had to do. And I was never paying attention to the homilies. I was just coming up with ideas for movies. And then I came to a point where I realized I don't need this in my life. I'm going to stop praying. I would pray every night because I was told to pray. And I remember the day where I told myself, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to go to sleep. And it was a very liberating feeling. But, religion is an important thing for a lot of people. It's basically a platform to understanding what's out there. And I definitely believe in God. I believe in divinity. But I don't feel like I need to use Catholicism as my platform to access that divinity. I'd rather just go meditate or something rather than pray. And so, religion has always been there, and I like exploring it in my films. And, if you look at some of my short films, there's always a religious aspect to it.
That's really interesting. And yeah, I mean, I did a little writing and for a while, and yeah, there was always coming from the Catholic high school. I was always interested in exploring more of that. Why? I'm basically in the same boat as you. Or even more so because I'm an atheist, probably because I went to Catholic high school.
Yeah, it happens.
Exactly.
When you try to force something down someone's throat for so many years, it repels them. It does the complete opposite sometimes. I get it.
Yeah, for sure. But it is such a fascinating subject to me, especially because so many people are so into that. I try not to be I try to be as non-judgmental as possible to anybody who's Catholic or whatever, but
Yeah, we're all just trying to find a way to believe in what's out there. And some people choose religion, other people choose paganism, or some people are Wiccans.
For sure.
But I believe that Jesus existed. There's enough evidence to suggest that the guy lived. But do I believe that he was the Son of God? I don't think so. I think he was just I think he was a prophet. He was a very intelligent, notable figure. He was woke. He was awake while most people were. And there are people like that now. Was he the Son of God? I don't know. Neither of us know that.
That's true. I wouldn't presume to say. I wouldn't presume to say either way. I'll say. But yeah, I mean, so that's interesting though. In terms of in a filmmaking perspective, you kind of have like a sandbox to play in, and maybe a little more access to it than people who didn't have that formative experience. Like at least in terms of religion, like you have this whole 12 years of being able to observe people who are like deeply Catholic, and it's always like a strange thing from the outside, and then when you can like shine a light on that from the other side, and you can use that to shine a light on other religions too, I think. Right. Yeah, I mean, that's for sure an interesting part of it, and it kind of leads me to my next question here, which is you're obviously trying to engage like the toxic parts of Roy Grady in this film, and he seems to have a real problem with women. But yeah, so suffice to say, he has a toxic relationship with most women in his life, and I think it's pretty obvious that was in there. Do you think that is part of his personality, or when you were writing it, did you write it as part of his personality? Is that rooted in his kind of religious zealotry, or is that its own separate thing, you think?
No, it totally is. And I wrote a backstory for Roy, and so did Lou. It's funny. Lou wrote his version of who he thought Roy Grady was, and I wrote mine. And it's scary how absolutely identical they were. We were both on it. And the story is basically, he worships Greek gods. So at one point, and he talks about it in the film, when he was younger, he was wild and he was free. So it's to be assumed that he used to be very sexual when he was young, with his partner, with his wife, who's no longer with him. She died. But something happened that made him make a full 180 or 360. And basically one of the main themes of the film is that of sexual repression. And Roy is an agent for sexual repression. While his daughter is blossoming, he is repressing his sexuality. So they are the complete opposite. They are hero and villain. And he's noticing that her sexuality is blossoming. She's growing up just like Magda was, and this makes him nervous because it reminds him of that time where he was wild, and it reminds him of his daughter Magda. So like history is repeating itself. So he's trying, like this whole time, he's trying to suppress that wild side of him, and that's why he chooses Harpocrates as his patron god, who is the god of silence and secrets. That's his way of suppressing the animal within. And, the whole theme of patron gods is something that I took from Catholicism. When I went to school, I had to choose my patron saint, St. Andrew. And in the Grady family, you have to select your patron god who represents your values, your personalities. Sprout chooses Artemis because she is of the earth. She's wild. She loves to play and be one with nature. And Roy chooses Harpocrates. That's basically his sexual repression incarnate.
Right. That's fascinating. It is such I don't want to say too much, but it's such an interesting thing seeing how everything starts to come to a head as Sprout is becoming a woman, is becoming a sign of things that have come before for Roy.
Right. Yeah, it's happening all over again. The bad thing that happened with Magda, where she wanted to grow up and rebel and be sexy and dress sexy, it's happening all over again with his little Sprout.
Yeah.
The girl that he thought he could baby for the rest of her life is, inevitably growing up.
All right. Well, I have pretty much come to the end of my questions, but I do want to talk a little bit more about kind of the ideas behind this movie, or is there anything else that we haven't discussed yet that you want to talk about?
Yeah, the whole concept, it is in many ways a monster movie because the main threat, at least for half of the movie, is a Gorgon. It's a monster. And that's, how we're marketing it with the poster materials and the key art as a monster film. And then, you realize in the end that, there's more than one kind of monster. So I've been very much influenced by monster films. Alien is by far my favorite monster movie of all time. And I tried to adopt a lot of the techniques that movies like that take, where you don't show the monster, you don't reveal it, you keep it out of focus in the shadows. Because to me, that's actually what scares me the most. An Alien likes to play with flashing strobe lights in the ship, and that's the only light source for this thing that's lurking in the shadows, and that's just so terrifying to me. And of course, Jaws, which didn't hide their shark intentionally, is because in reality it broke on set. And in many ways, our budget was so low for this. We didn't have much for the creature department. So out of necessity, we had to hide our monster as well.
I think so often that works better, though.
Yeah.
Like there's something to be said for and I will say that in your film, some of the scenes that I loved the most were those like kind of surreal horror scenes that really came through and really made. I don't know what your budget was on this, but it made it look like you had a decent production, had good production value from those takes. So I really appreciated that in terms of how those scenes looked, kind of the emotions they elicited. I think you have a good grasp on just how to get a feeling out of an audience with a scene like that.
Yeah, and if you have a low budget, there are crafty ways of pulling things off. As long as you have the right lenses and as long as you have the right lighting setup, you could achieve greatness. And then the power of editing and sound design. Sound is another important factor because when you don't have enough money for a full-on monsters, you have to rely on the sound design to really bring on the scares. And our sound designer, Chris, who's now a dear friend of mine after the bonding experience we had in that sound mixing studio, very long, delirious nights. We're now good friends. What he did in that room was greatness. He basically saved our film, which needed to be 40% ADR'd due to the noisy planes and motorcycles rumbling by our set. So he's my savior.
That's impressive. And just so everybody's listening knows, ADR is when you record everything afterwards and then put it back in.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I every once in a while I'm like, oh, I just learned this term like 3 years ago because I started this podcast. I should probably tell people what it means.
Yeah. Hard lesson learned now. Now for the next feature, we will thoroughly scout our location to make sure that it's not located in, an air pocket next to an airplane.
Next to an airport.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Where did you film?
We filmed it in Topanga Canyon, which is a little community in the mountains near Malibu in California. And, it was actually an Airbnb. I found it on Airbnb.
Nice.
So we basically rented it as an Airbnb, but paid more, all the production fees and septic tank removal fees, all that stuff.
Man, and airport adjacent, so that's nice.
And airport adjacent, and the location where motorcyclists like to race on weekends.
Yeah, it's we've got outside of where we record here. There's a couple of guys that drive their incredibly loud cars up and down the street all damn night. So I know a little bit of how you feel. Although you probably had it a bit worse. Trying to film a
The
feature
world,
film.
the world is a noisy place.
Yeah.
You know, every time we film indoors, it's so relieving. You know, filming outside is rough,
I can imagine. I can't even.
and you have no control of it. It's not like you could go and block off the street.
You're not Marvel Studios or anything. You can't just make sure
No,
nobody shows up.
no, you just have to wait. Hold for the plane. Hold for the motorcycle. We got two more coming after that. Wait, and like 30 minutes go by,
Yeah.
and the moment is lost. But
Yeah.
that's actually in one of the scenes where Lou Temple's character gets very angry and he's yelling. That anger that you see is real anger that had built up from waiting for the damn motorcycles to go away.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, I believed him definitely
Yeah.
when I saw that scene for sure. So it's good to
And
know where that was coming from.
he was originally supposed to, the energy level was supposed to be very low. It was supposed to be Jedi calm, very calm and creepy and soft spoken. But then after all the waiting, he was like, Andy, can I try something real quick? I'm going to do something totally different. All right. But yeah, man, go for it. And he did the entire thing yelling with monstrous growls and giggling and maniacal laughter. He turned into Jack Torrance from The Shining.
Yeah.
It worked, but the anger was real because we were all frustrated.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I think that scene turned out to be one of the better ones, like one of the more affecting ones in there. It was pretty impressive, and I definitely am going to remember that one for a while.
Oh, man, that's great to hear. Yeah, I agree. I love that scene.
It worked out really well. I kind of just wanted to touch on, you mentioned briefly earlier the Gorgon, and I don't want to get too far into it. But was that, so when you started writing this, I guess, was that like always going to be your like monster touchstone in this?
What was the question? Was this what was it? What was the question? You broke up for a bit.
Oh, sorry about that. So like the Gorgon, it was, when you started writing this, was that your like kind of initial idea as the monster touchstone in your monster movie, or was this always going to be a monster movie, or did it kind of become that?
It became that. I always wanted to make a childhood coming of age story with sleep paralysis, and then the Gorgon came with that. It's like, oh, okay, let's put a monster in this. We need the threat, we need the foe. So, but yeah, that came throughout the writing process, and I went through several drafts. I mean, the first draft was called The Otherness, and it was completely different, totally different setup, and that, producers weren't feeling that one, so I completely rewrote it into what became Comes of the Night. And originally, it wasn't even a Gorgon. It was just supposed to be a shadow lady, because when you have sleep paralysis, at least most people that have sleep paralysis, they all witness a shadow person, whether it be there's the Hat Man, there's a guy like a silhouetted dude with a hat. There's the shadow person who's just a silhouetted man. There's the black cat with the red eyes. I mean, look this shit up. It's real. It's really scary. People from all different cultures all witness these entities. I see the Hat Man.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to have that shadow person be the monster. And it eventually evolved into a Gorgon because the Greek mythology thing came later. So I was like, hey, why don't I make it a Greek mythological monster like Medusa? That would be cool. And Medusa turns people into stone, which is symbolic of the being paralyzed and sleep paralysis. So that's how it happened.
That's cool. I like that. I like that story of how that came in. Let's see. So I kind of wanted to. I always kind of do this when I do an interview, and I had something in mind for it, but I'm not sure exactly how well this is gonna work. So I might revise it a little bit. I always do like a quick 5 of your biggest. I was gonna ask you your biggest horror influences, which I guess you could probably do with all that time behind you and in Hulu or whatever. But like just a quick, not even top 5, but just the first 5 that come to mind of kind of what kind of influenced you in terms of, especially in terms of this film.
It was definitely The Shining, number one. The Shining is my favorite horror film, one of my favorite films, and I'm always trying to adopt little tidbits from that movie, little homages. and Between the Darkness has a lot of The Shining in there, kind of blatantly, but I don't care. I would want to honor that film, and I will continue to honor it. Yeah, The Shining is a complete fever dream. There's something about that film that even when I watch it as an adult, it still irks me. It still gets me. Yeah. It's the feeling. It's not conventional horror. It's the feeling of it gets under your skin. I have to say Alien, which I'd mentioned earlier. Alien is basically a haunted house slasher movie in space, you know, or getting picked off one by one by the slasher, the threat. And it's such a stylized masterpiece. I mean, the way it's lit, how the movie is just breathing with moisture. It's wet, it's dirty, it's gritty. They don't make movies like that anymore. And these sequels, and they just need to stop or at least hire a director who's younger. Ridley Scott needs to direct all of them. Yeah. More horror movies. Jaws. You know, Jaws is a masterpiece. It was directed by a guy who was 23 years old. Like a 23-year-old Steven Spielberg made that movie that will stand the test of time.
Right after Piranha, right? I think that was that his first one? Piranha? Did he do Piranha?
No, he did Duel, which was his first.
James Cameron? Is that James Cameron did Piranha? I don't know. Never mind. Now I'm pretty sure James Cameron did Piranha. Now that I think of it.
Yeah, that seems right. That seems right.
I knew it was one of those guys that like started off with some, you know, B horror movie and just like immediately shot through the stratosphere with like their next. Yeah. I think he did like Terminator after that.
That's interesting. That's an interesting trajectory from Piranha to Terminator.
Yeah.
More horror movies. I think one of the more recent ones was the Babadook. You know, that one. I love that movie because it's basically a metaphor for, you know, it's a mother and a son dealing with grief, and the Babadook is basically just a metaphorical monster, and I love that concept. I gotta say, Hereditary. I don't think I've been that scared, and I think that's the scariest movie I've ever seen. It is.
Wow.
It really messed me up, that movie. The director Ari Aster needs psychological help.
Have you seen? I haven't seen it yet, but have you seen Midsommar?
Yeah, I liked it. I
heard it's pretty damn good.
Yeah. Not as much as Hereditary, but it's, you know, I love what he does. He should keep making movies.
I kind of love that idea of in Midsommar, the idea of like a completely bright horror movie, which actually you kind of did. A lot of this movie is brightly lit, and a lot of you know, Between the Darkness is brightly lit and pretty bright, and I think that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, you know, I tell people that was intentional to try to sound artsy, but it wasn't. We had to shoot it during the daytime out of necessity because of our SAG, you know, kid schedule. They can't shoot at nighttime. I would have liked for the film to be at night, so I was like, all right, I guess this is going to be a daytime horror film. But, you know, watching it now, I think it works because when something evil is happening in broad daylight, there's something about that. There's a movie called Goodnight Mommy. It's an Austrian horror film, and it's all during the daytime as well. And that concept to me is really scary.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about, especially contrasting it with the standard of horror is to just go really dark, and like I get that, but there's something a little more unsettling when you go so far out of that range.
Yeah. For sure. I have to throw in another one. It's Scream, the first Scream.
Oh, I love it.
You know, I'll probably never make a movie like that, super campy, but I love it. I love the feeling of it. It's such a fun, good time. It's such a great slasher film. It's basically a parody on slasher films, and it's got to hold a special place in my heart because it's a childhood favorite. And I just remember, you know, waking up early with my brother to pop Scream into the VCR and watch it twice daily. We loved it.
Nice. Yeah, Scream is a really good one. I think kind of a turning point, right? It's made a joke of while at the same time revering the like 80s slashers and you know, early 90s slashers, and kind of made its own genre afterwards out of what the slashers became.
Yeah, and it's funny because the second one, Scream 2, is a parody on the first one. They're making a movie about what happened in the first one. So I love that concept, that very meta concept. Love notes to the horror genre.
Yeah, that's a blast. I really like what they did with that too. So I'm glad you added it as your unofficial sixth. We'll call your official sixth.
Yeah, let's do that.
So I think that's pretty much it. I want to give you the chance to let everybody know where we can find you, if you're working on any new projects, or if you have anything going on in the future, or even if you want to just give some shout outs to anybody. This is the time.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's my full name, Andres.j.Rovira. I'm always posting my work, commercials that I'm working on, films, teasers, trailers, photos. And right now I'm working on a Forbes docuseries called Titans on the Rocks. It's basically a talk show with celebrities where every episode they sit at a bar, they drink their cocktail of choice, they talk shop, and it's basically, every episode is about their lives. It's like comedians in cars getting coffee, but with alcohol. We've got Cedric the Entertainer as one of our Titans, who I'm really excited about. So that's what I'm working on. That's what's keeping me busy. But please, the one thing I want to shout out is the film, Between the Darkness. It comes out tomorrow, the 20th. You can find it on iTunes, In Demand, DirectTV, Fandango, a bunch of platforms. And then it'll be on DVD and Blu-ray a couple months from now. And then hopefully, I think it'll be on like the Showtimes and, the paid subscription platforms. And then after that, the final stretch, I think, should be like Hulu and Netflix. But I don't know the specifics. I don't know which one. So, watch Between the Darkness tomorrow. Buy it. Enjoy it.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to see it early, but actually when you hear this, ladies and gentlemen, it will be yesterday that it came out. So it's out. It's available.
Nice.
Check it out, Between the Darkness. Andy Rovira, thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, I think we're gonna say goodnight to all you fine folks. So thanks a lot, man, and we appreciate you coming by.
Hey, it was a pleasure talking to you. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Hermosi. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.
Or Mott's?